Welcome back to Movie Recap. Today I'm gonna show you a 2016 Chinese action comedy film called Railroad Tigers. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with a group of teachers entertaining their anti-preschool students during their field trip to the Railway Museum. However, one of their students suddenly walks away without them knowing, unconsciously walking himself to the other side of the train. Afterward, the young boy enters an open locomotive part of the train, wherein he eventually sees a drawing that shows a winged cat. Amused, the young boy watches the steam locomotive open to reveal the glistening red light inside. Later, the film shows the people involved in the story, starting with Da Hai, an amateur tailor. Da Hai walks himself to the railway station from Tianjin to Nanjing in East China, wherein he meets Xinger, the handywoman, who eventually follows him from behind. The railway, later on, becomes a key military transportation route, which Japanese soldiers heavily guard during their occupation to expand their lands. Frustrated, Da Hai directly accuses Xinger of putting them in trouble as she keeps on following him. Yet, Da Hai still lets her go with him, leaving him no choice because Xinger has already arrived at the railway station. Afterward, they safely get onto the train while Xinger starts their conversation with her backtalking, telling Da Hai that he never takes her on big missions. So, Da Hai debunks her belief about his big missions, wishing to get that kind of mission with her. Da Hai then stands up, only to find out that Feng Bangxian, a fortune teller, is already with him on a train. So, Da Hai directly goes outside, and helps himself get to the top of the train roof to signal his troops, Ma Yuan, the head porter, Xiaohu, the porter, Rui, the maintenance worker, and Da Kui, the station worker. After a while, the five of them start their mission as Ma Yuan gets inside to take care of the Japanese soldier. At the same time, Xiaohu accomplishes his task to turn down another Japanese soldier who controls the train with the motorman. On the other hand, Da Kui is taking down two Japanese soldiers at the back of the compartment coach, and Da Hai attempts to rescue a Chinese woman from a Japanese soldier trying to assault her. Luckily, Ma Yuan arrives and immediately attacks after the train passes under the bridge. Luckily, the freedom fighters successfully ambush the Japanese guarding the passenger train, and strip them down afterward. Bored, Xiaohu and Rui decide to draw a tiger on the Japanese soldiers' stomachs using the blood pouring down on their noses. Eventually, they slow down the train to throw all the Japanese military uniforms, and steal their supplies to feed the starving Chinese. Rui and Da Hai then stay on board while Ma Yuan takes the rest of his men on the way to distribute the goods. Due to their victory, the freedom fighters joyously sing their song with the Chinese passengers on the train. Meanwhile, the Japanese military police captain, Yamaguchi, is training his officers when suddenly he gets a phone call from Sasaki, the station master. As they talk on the phone, Sasaki pleads with Yamaguchi to take a look at the railway. Because of that, Yamaguchi takes his soldiers as Sakamoto, the translator, gathers them to deploy. On the other hand, Huang Yifeng, the deputy station master, suddenly gets into trouble after not seeing the train's arrival at Nanjing. Using his deep knowledge of the train network, Ma Yuan works on his next mission to steal more supplies while the Japanese soldiers overlook their identities. Then, Auntie Chin, the pancake seller, helps Ma Yuan with his mission by giving the Japanese soldiers some pancakes, and reporting to Ma Yuan about the problem with the station master. Seconds later, the train finally arrives at Nanjing, so the Yamaguchi soldiers immediately check it inside. At the same time, San Lazy, the thief, suddenly calls Da Hai, who's watching the scene outside over the window. Dismay, Yamaguchi and his soldiers see their comrades passed out inside, assuming that it's the winged cat who did it to them. However, Yamaguchi suddenly calls out Da Hai, accusing him of being a member of the winged cat, so Da Hai explains that he's only a tailor by taking out his scissors in his pocket. The evidence of him proving that Da Hai is a victim successfully works out after a Japanese soldier tells Yamaguchi that he isn't the one who attacked them. However, Ma Yuan and his fighters almost get caught after Yamaguchi receives information about them being the suspects. But, thanks to the logbook, Yamaguchi's soldier reports that they've been working since morning. Later, Ma Yuan and his men take all the stolen goods from the Japanese to their cave. Suddenly, Da Kui asks Ma Yuan why he always carries the pipe every time they get into their mission. Technically, the freedom fighters have no weapons, so they employ whatever tools are at hand, such as hammers, shovels, and pipes. On the other hand, Bangxian tries to lure out the Japanese soldiers after taking him into their headquarters when suddenly, they receive a call. After that, they eventually lock Bangxian up. Meanwhile, Ma Yuan tries to flirt with Auntie Chin, who's busy preparing their food in the kitchen, when suddenly, they hear a strange noise outside. So, Ma Yuan and Da Hai immediately run, only to find out the injured 8th Route Army soldier, Dago, is lying on the ground vertically. Afterward, Dago favors if he can hide inside Oni-chin's house when suddenly a group of Japanese soldiers, including Yamaguchi, attempts to trespass to find Dago inside. Fortunately, Dago successfully hides from Yamaguchi with the help of Ma Yuan. However, Ma Yuan suddenly thinks of an idea to move Dago to the cave after Anti-Chin heals his wounds. Suddenly, Fan Chuan, a noodle shop owner, appears and meets Ma Yuan and his men. Because of that, Ma Yuan shares his knowledge about Chuan's identity, saying that he is a sharpshooter who also fights against the Japanese. Technically, they tend to blow up the bridge that the Japanese are occupying. Afterward, they continue working at the train station when suddenly the station master calls Ma Yuan for a talk. Unfortunately, the station master finds out that they are the ones who are sabotaging the railway, yet Ma Yuan begs to disagree with him. Seconds later, the Japanese military police inspector, Yuko, eventually arrives as Yamaguchi sends reinforcements to Shandong. Later at night, Ma Yuan already takes Dago to the cave, telling him that it would take 10 days for him to get fully healed. Panicking, Dago says he needs to blow the bridge in 4 days to go home. So, Ma Yuan decides to help him get into the bridge by taking the train. However, after they successfully get on the train, Dago reveals that he was lying about going home, saying that he's only going back to the bridge, and blowing it up as a sign of the war effort. Unfortunately, Ma Yuan and Dago get into trouble after the train stop as the Japanese soldiers will inspect what is inside it. So, Dago forces Ma Yuan to leave as he will take care of the Japanese soldiers, saying that if he ever doesn't make it, Ma Yuan will inform his platoon that he gets failed, and they will do it instead. Unfortunately, Ma Yuan hears a gunshot after leaving, indicating that Yuko has already killed Dago. So, Ma Yuan decides to check out the bridge himself while visiting his mother's grave. Afterward, he immediately gets back to his house when suddenly he meets his freedom fighters on the road. Technically, the group thinks Ma Yuan will blow the bridge, so they follow him, and join Ma Yuan on his big mission. So, the group immediately plans afterward, and Ma Yuan plans on talking with Chuan to ask how he detonates a Japanese explosive pack. But Chuan only tells him that they have no chance to take down the Japanese bridge. The following day, the freedom fighters begin their mission at the railway, taking down all the Japanese soldiers guarding the area. Afterward, Ma Yuan, Dahai, and Rui climb the wall with the help of Dakui and Xiaohu when suddenly Dahai sees a ladder beside the wall, realizing their silliness in getting to the roof. Unfortunately, the freedom fighters find themselves on the wrong side of the tracks as they take Dago's mission and finish it. In defiance, Ma Yuan launches his most dangerous mission with his men as they discreetly enter the supply room after the Japanese soldiers get out to take care of the shouting Chinese woman. However, Rui suddenly gets caught by a Japanese soldier while stealing packs of explosive bombs, so Ma Yuan helps him out, and beats the soldiers. Luckily, the freedom fighters accomplish their mission, and get on the train before it departs. However, the Japanese soldiers learn about their crippling plan, which will derail the war effort, so they immediately follow the train to catch the freedom fighters. On the other hand, Ma Yuan begins ordering Xiaohu and Dakui to take care of the pack while the rest will fight the Japanese soldiers. However, Xiaohu is getting attacked by 2 Japanese soldiers outside, so Dahai and Dakui help him out by throwing the goods over the window. Fortunately, the freedom fighters successfully beat the Japanese soldiers. Afterward, they walk themselves on the way to the bridge when suddenly a group of Japanese soldiers arrives. Unfortunately, Dakui gets caught by the Japanese soldiers, and almost gets shot. But with an immediate response from Ma Yuan, the Japanese soldiers get killed after the freedom fighters throw the pack of explosive bombs. Meanwhile, Yuko suddenly arrives at the office of the station master, asking if any one of his employees has missed work today. On the other hand, Yamaguchi punishes Kameda for his recklessness to lose the explosives. Unfortunately, the freedom fighters fail to blow up the bridge, so Dahai walks out after he gets frustrated. However, Sanlazy suddenly grabs him to let him see Yuko in the market, finding them among the crowd. So, Dahai decides to attack them without thinking, allowing Ma Yuan and Xiaohu to get caught because of his impulsiveness. Later, Yamaguchi starts interrogating Ma Yuan and Xiaohu after getting them arrested. However, Yamaguchi struggles with understanding them because of the language barrier, so he orders his soldier to get him a translator. On the other hand, Zinger seeks help from Chuan to save his father, Ma Yuan. However, Chuan refuses to accept her plea. Meanwhile, Ma Yuan and Xiaohu deal with the Chinese translator to help them pass through the interrogation by saying they steal the explosive to fry fish. However, Yamaguchi and Yuko are not convinced by their excuse, assuming that they're only lying. The following day, Ma Yuan and Xiaohu are compelled to get taken by train in 2 hours. Unfortunately, the station master sees them from the window, calling them railroad tigers, who fail to accomplish their mission this time. Afterward, Yamaguchi threatens them, saying that if their friends rescue them, they will get captured, but if not, he implicates that the railroad tigers are not their friends. Minutes later, Dahai and Rui successfully get on the train, and immediately find Ma Yuan and Xiaohu's location. So, Dahai controls the engine while Rui's discreetly cutting the rope in Ma Yuan's hands. Afterward, Dahai walks toward Rui's area to help him open the train door. Luckily, Yamaguchi's soldier helps Ma Yuan and Xiaohu escape after seeing Yamaguchi fall asleep because of the pancake he eats earlier. Fortunately, the sharpshooter Chuan accepts Singer's plea to help his father, and kills the remaining Japanese soldiers inside the train. Because of their unity, the railroad tigers accomplish their mission to save Ma Yuan and Xiaohu. Afterward, the railroad tigers, including Chuan, go to Waishan Lake, showing Chuan the used Japanese military uniforms they will wear later. On the other hand, the station master gets arrested after giving the money to Sanlazy, not knowing that there's a note inside it. Luckily, Chuan agrees to join them. However, the station master reveals where the railroad tiger is so that Yuko will spare his life from torturing him. Later, Yuko deploys his soldiers, including the station master, to Waishan Lake to capture the railroad tigers. So, Ma Yuan orders them to follow him quietly as they take the boat to escape. However, Yamaguchi notices them, and immediately throws the grenade, but accidentally directs it at their vessel, making them explode. Luckily, the railroad tigers flee from them. Afterward, Ma Yuan reveals that Dago wants to blow up the bridge to cut their supplies on the Japanese soldiers. However, they suddenly meet Singer and Sanlazy outside the cave, giving them the note from the station master, telling them that a supply train is crossing Hanzhuang Bridge tomorrow. At first, they refuse to believe him, but when Chuan tells them that he changes sides whenever it suits him, the railroad tigers eventually take the station master's note. Later at night, the railroad tigers spend their night at the cave to prepare while Singer, on the other hand, calls Erpang to help his father's team to make weapons. While eating the pancakes that Auntie Chin has made, Ma Yuan begins to discuss their plan, in which they will hop aboard once the train leaves Shagu Station. Then, the first thing they will do is find explosives hidden in a closed cargo hold, and when the Japanese inspect the train at Zhaozhuang Station, they will hide, and make their move as the train leaves. So, the train mustn't stop under any circumstance because they are the ones who'll stop the train in the middle of the bridge, and wrap the explosives around its pillars to make it explode then eventually collapse. The following day, the railroad tigers begin their dangerous mission when Ma Yuan suddenly sees Singer joining them. So, he warns his daughter to get off the train once they blow the bridge. However, Sanlazy suddenly joins them after climbing onto the train, who luckily sees the pack of explosives in another compartment. Unfortunately, Yamaguchi finds out that Yuko has left inside the train, so he immediately runs and gets inside, only to find out that the railroad tigers are at it again. So, Yamaguchi and Yuko eventually get into a fight with them while Rui, on the other hand, keeps himself busy controlling the train. Meanwhile, Sanlazy signals Dahai that the explosives are inside the compartment. Dahai immediately kills the 2 Japanese soldiers while Ma Yuan and the rest take care of Yuko's soldiers inside the wagon. Afterward, Chuan volunteers himself to take down Yamaguchi using the tank on the train. However, Yuko suddenly attacks Rui to control the train, but unfortunately, she fails to knock him out. Rui then quickly blows the steam to make the train continuously move while Chuan, on the other hand, successfully blows up the Japanese hopper. The movie ends with the railroad tigers trying to save Singer from the Japanese soldiers while Rui takes down Yuko on the locomotive. Luckily, Dakui saves Singer, and Rui officially knocks Yuko down by sacrificing themselves to get off the train. Then, Ma Yuan grabs Sanlazy to get off his daughter with him. Technically, only 5 of them are left inside the train to bomb the Japanese bridge, and take down the remaining Japanese soldiers. Despite running out of ammo, the railroad tigers refuse to give up, same with Dakui and Rui, who steal another train and save the team. Though they almost failed on their mission to blow up the bridge, the ragtag Chinese railroad tigers suddenly appear to help them kill the enemy, allowing Ma Yuan to finish his task of activating the explosives into the compartment filled with bombs. Because of that, the railroad tigers join the 8th Route Army to protect their country. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.